Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gotta Get Running. I'm Phil Hargis. Alongside of me is Chris Farley. Chris, good to see you again on Gotta Get Running.
Hey, how you doing, Phil?
Doing good, man. Just, getting out there. We had a narrow miss with the blizzard last week, so we didn't get any snow, which, of course, I like snow running, so I was a little bummed about that. But, you can't beat the spring weather around D.C.
Well, how's your? I know you were injured before. How's your injury coming around?
It's coming around good, man.
Good.
I finally I'm gearing up for like a really busy season. I have a busy calendar ahead of me. A lot of races are starting to materialize on the schedule. I've started doing brick training again for some of the ultras I have coming up, so I'm pretty excited about that. How about you? Are you still doing your 10 miles a day?
I'm done with the 10 miles a day and just doing, races every month and gearing up for a number of Pacers races that we got on the schedule here.
So one of the things we like to do, we have a lot of races coming up here in the spring, which we all know about. We've talked to all the race directors here in town. We've talked about the Marine Corps Marathon, the Cherry Blossom, all the great Pacers races and everything. But we also have a lot of great races outside of this area and a lot of fun stuff you can do that isn't here in Washington, D.C. And anybody that knows me knows that I love horse racing. I love Kentucky. And then after going through that Ragnar relay experience last summer, I saw how fun the relay experience it can be. And there's a lot of cool things like relays that you can do, to broaden your running and like go out of DC and take like a little destination experience. But like there's a great race out in Kentucky, my old Kentucky home here. It's the Bourbon Chase, and it's out there. It's just outside of Louisville, and it runs through Lexington. But we have the race director, I'm excited to say, of the Bourbon Chase here. He flew all the way from Kentucky to be here in studio with us, just for us. So why don't you introduce him, Chris?
Yeah, well, we have Mike Kuntz here. He's from the Bourbon Chase race. Welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I got to tell you, I'm feeling already a little bit unprepared. I'm not training for an ultra, and I'm definitely not doing 10 miles a day, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I'm running with the right company.
Well, he's actually got the 200-mile race coming up here. That's longer than all of us combined.
All right.
No, you'll be just fine. I'm looking forward to getting into this with you. We'll have some fun here on the show. The Bourbon Chase 2013. Let's get to the particulars. When is the race?
The race is October 18th and 19th this year. It moves around every year. We normally chase the full moon around.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's one of those 200-mile relay races.
It is. It's a traditional distance, right around 200 miles, 36 legs, 12 people traditionally on a team.
Okay.
Everybody runs 3 different times.
Okay, and similar to some of the other races like a Ragnar or a Hood to Coast, where you've got 2 vans and sort of your one van is going and the other one is sleeping or hopefully sleeping. Talk about your course. Where does it go? I know it's is it start near Louisville?
It starts about 20 miles south of Louisville at Jim Beam Distillery.
Okay.
And again, it runs along the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And the Kentucky Bourbon Trail is a collection of some of the most popular distilleries in the world. In fact, 95% of the world's bourbon are made right there in Kentucky. So it starts at Jim Beam, about 20 minutes south of Louisville. It meanders its way down to Bardstown. Bardstown was named, I believe, by USA Today as the nicest small town in Kentucky. I mean, in Kentucky, in the USA.
In the U.S.
A charming, charming little community that also has Heaven Hill there. Heaven Hill makes Elijah Craig, for example. Excellent bourbon from there. From there, it goes down to Maker's Mark. And Maker's Mark literally is in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. That's the end of Van 1. Then Van 2 starts, and you really start to get a Kentucky experience as it sort of twists and turns its way through a lot of charming communities like Lebanon, Springfield, Danville. None of these probably mean anything to you guys, but I'm telling you, they're just, well, the vice presidential debate was in Danville. That's Center College, so it went through there. Before it starts back up north and hits Four Roses Distillery as the sun goes up, goes to Wild Turkey next, then on to Woodford Reserve, and then it runs through a beautiful little city called Midway before it finishes in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. 200 miles, part road trip, part road race, 100% great time.
Well, it doesn't just finish in Lexington, Kentucky, but where specifically in Lexington?
It's a spot called Triangle Park on Main Street in the shadows of Rupp Arena, where the University of Kentucky plays their basketball.
Right, so you're not drinking bourbon along the course.
You're definitely not doing that during the race.
Because I've done a number of these races, and you got to have your wits about you.
Yes, you do.
But tell us about how you came up with this idea. Where did it come from?
Actually, went out to Hood to Coast.
Okay.
Hood to Coast is probably the granddaddy of them all when it comes to overnight relays. I used to coach at the University of Louisville some years ago, and a gentleman up here in D.C. actually, who was on my team, invited me to join the team. I had coached him, and he gave me a call and he said, "Hey, Bulldog, we're running this thing called the Hood to Coast. Want you to be our anchor leg." So we went out to Oregon and ran this thing. Amazing experience. I mean, you've run it yourself, I believe, Chris. And amazing experience. But when I left there, and not to disparage the race because it was, like I say, just a tremendous experience, I thought to myself, you know what? I think we could do something like this in Kentucky and really highlight the bourbon industry, really highlight the beautiful horse country, and also give the runners just a tremendous boutique experience. Hood to Coast is really large, so my plan was to do something much smaller and much more intimate. So, for example, we do a welcome reception the night before where there is bourbon, beer, Kentucky beer, and free hors d'oeuvres. We do anybody who runs in the Bourbon Chase the day after the Bourbon Chase gets free entry into Keeneland, which is a historic and beautiful horse track. Come there after the race, watch the horses run instead of you run, have a couple mint juleps, enjoy a good time. We do a tailgate party out there that Sunday afterwards. So even though it's a 2-day race, it's really kind of a 4-day extravaganza. So we're really all about the boutique experience, customer service, a lot of fun.
And it's amazing. The scenery out there, which you can see, they have great picture photos on the website, and there's one on the cover of the Bourbon Chase Bible here. But the scenery is awesome. You're running through the horse farms. I know there's a lot of breeding stations out there and everything.
Oh yeah, I mean literally you are running by some of the horse farms where past Kentucky Derby winners are now out to stud. So it is absolutely stunning some of the spots. And mighty remote as well. Like I say, I wasn't kidding when I say Maker's Mark is in the middle of nowhere. It literally is just a few miles from the geographic center of Kentucky, and it really is the middle of nowhere. So it's great. But it's shocking whenever I go to visit Maker's Mark, if I'm just there for a meeting or something, I look around the parking lot and I see the license plates from Michigan, Virginia, Florida, Canada. I mean, people come from all around to find that little bit of distillery out there because of the great product they produce. And our runners come from all around the country. We've got a lot of runners from the D.C. area, but literally last year we had 44 states represented, 3 countries represented, folks from all around. It's just a great time.
So I'm not a bourbon guy. I'm more of a beer. I know. What? It's crazy. It's crazy. But is this race gonna turn me on to bourbon?
Well, first of all, Chris, just so you know, we got beer too.
I can be a bourbon guy. I can learn.
You did ask.
Sell me on it.
And let me be clear, since it is called the Bourbon Chase, I should clarify from the beginning. We do have bourbon the night before, and Kentucky beer. We do have bourbon, complimentary bourbon tasting at the finish line. As well as Kentucky ale beer there at the finish line as well. But the race itself is not a drinking event, obviously. But we, what was the question? I'm so darn lost.
How are you going to turn me on to bourbon? Because I wanted to get to the after party where the bourbon is just flowing.
Well, there you go. It is flowing. Well, you will run through this is what I hear from folks who've never run. We've got a lot of women who will run the race. And they run it because they say this just sounds like a great time, and my other girlfriends talked me into it, but I don't drink bourbon. But by the end, they're like, I kind of like this bourbon. All right. See? So and I'm not saying you're a girl. But what I am saying is this. What I am saying is this: that as you go through these historic distilleries, and you do get a chance, as you say, there's an active van and there's an inactive van. So while Phil's van is running, your van is resting, and you may decide to take a tour at Jim Beam, for example. And as you're touring through Jim Beam, I think you'll start to understand why Congress back in 1964 passed a law that said bourbon is our national drink. Bourbon, baby, not beer. Bourbon is our national. So you're being patriotic when you run the Bourbon Chase and when you drink Kentucky bourbon. So no lie, I think you'll see why it is such a special drink and why it is so American and why folks even like George Washington literally were distillers of whiskey. So So it's very educational when it comes to that. But at the finish line, there are samples of the bourbon. Everybody who participates in the race gets to go through and now they get to sample from every distillery that was along the way. Wow. So it's really nice, and I think you'll find a bourbon that suits your palate.
Yeah.
Now, do the distilleries along the route, do they change their hours to accommodate the different waves of runners as they come through the course?
Almost definitely. Again, we start at Jim Beam, and the first wave of runners, because of this type of event, it runs, the fastest teams will take about 20 hours. The slower teams will take closer to 35, 36 hours. Because of that, we stagger the start so we can funnel the finish. We don't want to have a finish line that's spread out over 12 hours. So instead, we spread out the starting line over about 12 hours. So your team may be a little slower. You may start at 9 in the morning, whereas your team may be really fast. Your team may start at 6 p.m. But eventually, your team will catch them and pass them and finish at about the same time.
Now, you know, the race has got a big charity component to it.
Yeah, it does.
Well. So can you speak to that?
I appreciate you bringing that up, because honestly, a lot of folks I don't think are aware of what a great job we do with our charities.
Sure.
We have 3 charities of choice, okay? One of them is the Leukemia Society, which I think most people are familiar with. The second one is the Hospice Foundation. And the third one is a local charity specifically that's called Lex Arts, which obviously, as the name implies, promotes the arts within the Lexington and Central Kentucky area. What we do is we assign or give each one of those charities 10 teams, and those teams will raise money for that charity. And so each year, the last 3 years, we're very proud to say that we've raised $150,000 collectively for those charities. And considering that, again, we keep our event relatively small, we've sold out every year. This is our 5th year. So this year would be our largest race. We're going to have about 320 to 350 teams when the starting gun goes off. But the reality is it's still only about 4,000 runners. So for 4,000 runners to raise $150,000 to $200,000 is quite an achievement. So we're very proud of that.
And that's another thing about Kentucky too that a lot of people don't know, is that there is a huge arts culture within the community there.
Yeah, I know, Phil, that you're pretty familiar with Louisville, and due to your love of horse racing and everything. But there most definitely is. We're very proud, not only in Louisville, but also in Lexington of the arts. So I think Lex Arts was a natural fit for us for one of our charities. In fact, Lex Arts, small plug here, is the only, I say we're sold out. The reality is there are a few charitable spots still open through the Lex Arts Avenue, but that's it. Leukemia is already full on their charitable spots. Hospice is full. The only one left open is Lex Arts.
And it is. Let's backtrack a little bit to the registration process for your race, because it's something you have to be aware of with the registration dates with so many big races that are so popular these days. What's the best way to get into your race for next year, for 2014?
Yeah, well, again, you can still get in this year if you want to run for the charity.
The charity, right.
So that is still possible.
And how many spots do you have open for that? You said
I think there's about 5 left for that particular charity. Yeah, and there is a commitment that comes along with raising money for that charity. And you know, on our website, there's a spot that says charities. Just go there, and they tell you how to get.
So go to bourbonchase.com and then click on the charity section.
Yep, and right there it will say Lex Arts, and click on that, and you'll be connected to them, and just say, hey, what's it take to run for you guys?
Yeah, bourbonchase.com. It's really easy to remember. Just go there, and it's a great website. There's tons of information on there.
But for next year, what we did this year and what we will probably repeat next year is we do a lottery, just like the New York City Marathon, for example. And folks will apply to that lottery, and then we will draw names and decide which teams get in. And so this year, unfortunately, we turned away probably more teams than we actually were able to accept. But that's the best way to get in. And if folks want to, we'll probably start that on January 2nd, but it would be a good idea for your viewers, if they are interested in being part of that lottery, to go to our website, and there's a little spot that says Get Connected. It says news, click on that and sign up for our email newsletter, and we'll send something out to them in December and say, hey, next week we start our lottery.
Gotcha.
And then you're in. So then you register for the lottery at the beginning, and it's very efficient. I mean, you do the drawing with a reasonable amount of time.
Oh,
so
yeah, 2 weeks later.
Right off the bat.
Everybody knows within 2 weeks, good or bad.
Right. Because you got to start training. I mean, it's never too early to start training. I know January 1, you've got a ways to October, but it's quite an undertaking. So, you definitely want to put in some serious training for these events. Each leg is between, 15 and 20 miles or so, is that right?
Yeah, collectively.
Right.
So everybody, again, runs 3 different times, and each time you run an average of about 5.5 miles. And I say average. In our particular race, one particular runner, his 3 legs only totals about 11.9.
Gotcha.
So that'd be an easier one. But maybe I'll take that one.
Right.
All right. Whereas another leg, the toughest one, it averages it's over 20 miles, and you can have that one, Chris. He seems to be younger than us, so you can have that one. But on average, yeah, they're about 5.5 miles a pop.
Okay, so let's talk about the training, of course, then, and the level of fitness required to do one of these events. So I've been out there before. I've been to that. I mean, it's rolling hilly. It's hilly, but there's not any really steep mountainous terrain that I can think of, is there?
I'll just tell you, we get a lot of folks from Ohio. All right, I mean, it's a neighbor right up north, pretty populous state. They tell me it's a lot tougher course than I think I first appreciated. There are some monsters out there. There's this one road called Potter Shop, and we call it, the first leg you run on it is Potter Shop of Horrors. Second one is Potter Shop of Horrors, the sequel. They're both really, really tough legs. I won't lie to you. They're straight up and straight down. Overall, it is beautiful, but it's a really, on the scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the toughest, I'll give it a 7.
Okay. And what kind of shape does somebody need to be in? I mean, Chris is obviously always in great shape. He can run 10 miles a day, but you don't need that level of fitness to do one of these.
Having been an ex-coach, I'll say with some confidence that if I were training someone for this event, I would tell them that they should be prepared to run a mini marathon. They should be prepared to run a half marathon, because anyone who's done it, and you both have run these overnight relays, anyone who's done one knows that third time you come climbing out of the van, it can be painful. So I encourage people to train as if they're going to do a half marathon. And in fact, a few weeks before, it's a good idea to do a few double sessions. So maybe in the morning, go out and do 7 miles. In the evening, go out and do another 7 miles. Get you a little more prepared for what you've got in store for you after being in the van for 24 hours and climbing out for that third run.
But I'll tell you, I don't want to focus too much on the negative of, I mean, because it's a difficult thing to accomplish, but talk about maybe some inspiring, fun stories that you see along course.
Well, first of all, you're 100% right. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how darn hard this thing is, but people just keep on coming back. And it's just not this overnight relay. Overnight relays are a blast. I tell people, if you've never done one, do one. I happen to think ours is the best. I am biased, but honestly, it is darn good. And who else is pouring free bourbon at the finish line? Okay?
Seriously.
So I'll tie that right back to the bourbon. One story that really gets me, there's a gentleman who was, quite frankly, by his own admissions, quite a bit overweight. He said he saw a shirt that said, "We'll run for bourbon." And that's one of our training shirts, okay? Back on the back it says the Bourbon Chase, and across the front it says, "We'll run for bourbon." All right? He said, that's something I would run for. So he found out what the race was, started training, got a team together, ran our race, said he had such a good time that now he does half marathons and marathons all the time. That's awesome. So we got stories like that all the time. Very, very exciting. So we put on a race. We want it to be very special, but we also want to change lives. And I think we are doing that. And truth be known, Kentucky is not the state known for the greatest fitness.
Right.
I mean, I think Men's Health magazine,
horse fitness, maybe.
Horses, yes, our horses run, but not our people, sadly. But I think races like the Bourbon Chase are starting to change the landscape a little bit. Even though we bring in the majority of runners to do the Bourbon Chase, there's still 40% of the participants are from Kentucky, and we're really changing a lot of lives there. And that's exciting, because I know that's important to you too. You know, with your shops and everything.
Absolutely, so. and it is, but it is festive. You got to keep it fun. Because your demographic isn't, fast runners necessarily. So along the course, is there, vans decorated and things of that sort?
Yeah, most definitely. And overnight relays, by nature, are just fun trips. As I mentioned earlier, I really am serious. When I describe them to people, I usually say it's 1 part road trip, 1 part road race. I said that earlier. So it's so much more than just going out and doing a road race. It is really a road trip with your buddies. You put together your best buddies in a van, and you're out there traveling for 200 miles. It's a stinking blast. Yeah. And so it just becomes second nature that they're going to decorate that van, they're going to give their team a creative name, and they're just going to get out there and have a great time. And usually it's all held, with good taste. Rarely do we have to say tone it down.
Above board usually.
Usually it's just a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Okay, so I know there's a lot of cool contests and prizes for the people that are a little more creative. Can you tell us about some of those?
Well, we have a most team spirited. And I'm trying to remember who won that last year. I think it was I know the team that won the van contest, the best decked out van, was their vans were all dressed up like big pigs. Okay, looked awesome. The year before it was a big shark van. I loved that van. But I'm trying to remember, last year it might have been the Fermented Fugitives who won the honor for the most spirited team. They were all wearing prisoner outfits the whole time. One year, a whole team ran as superheroes, and literally with their capes on the entire time.
Race.
So, and that's par for the course. If you've done overnight relays, folks try to do that. And every year we try to have a theme. Last year's theme was Madness in the Moonlight. All right, it was a full moon, beautiful September evening, Madness in the Moonlight. This year, we haven't quite announced it. So this is a little bit,
teaser.
Little teaser, right?
But it's going to have to do with kind of a late '60s psychedelic rock and roll theme.
Awesome.
So bring your love beads.
Awesome.
And your Jimi Hendrix.
So it's got to take an army of people to put this on. Talk about your staff. How many staff members do you have working with you?
Well,
and volunteers, of course.
And volunteers too.
Volunteers, I'll start
staff.
there because they're probably the most important.
Yeah.
We have about 1,000 volunteers all told, and when I say that, it kind of numbs my mind because there's so many darn people out there. But yeah, counting the 36 exchange points, middle of the night, different shifts, starting line, finish line, stuffing packets, getting all that stuff ready, 1,000 volunteers.
Wow.
Below that, I have a core of 6 people, kind of my field generals, if you will, that really are on it year long. So, I mean, we're not the Chicago Marathon with, a staff of 40 full-time. But we definitely, we're working on this year round. It is any undertaking of this magnitude, and I know you do event management, so you understand this, you've just got to devote yourself year round. And when we made the decision back in 2009 to launch this race, we decided we were not going to make this, just your little 5K, up the block type of race.
Right.
We were going to go at it with a very corporate attitude, a very professional attitude, and again, our goal was not to be the biggest, it was to be the best, though, and we really feel like we have achieved that. In a very short amount of time, we are one of the most popular overnight relays in the country, and I think it's due to the hard work of the staff and the volunteers making that happen.
How do I volunteer if I want to volunteer?
Oh, I love you, man.
I'll lay this up for you.
They'll send you an airline ticket and you can go out there.
Well, if you're willing to work, maybe I'll take you. Really, just go on our website. There's a volunteer page. It really doesn't open for volunteer signups until May 1st, but we'd love to have you, and love to have anyone from the DC area. A lot of fun. And if you're thinking about the Bourbon Chase for next year, come down there and volunteer and just check it out the first year and see what it's all about. I guarantee you'll sign up for it.
And the volunteers going to participate in all the after party and everything like that?
Yeah, most definitely. In fact, honestly, if any of your listeners are interested in volunteering, I know that's not exactly a day trip, okay, but maybe they've got family down there, they want to come down. This is not just a perk for your listeners, but so they know they do get first dibs on registration next year for a team. Yeah, I mean, we've got to have those volunteers. We really appreciate it. Just like teams who run for a charity get first dibs on regular admission to the race next year as well. Try to give them a little bit of head up.
So you just go to your website, bourbonchase.com.
Yep,
and
there's a volunteer page, there's a charity page. We're covering our whole website today.
Got it all, right?
So do I have to be a young buck to run this race, or do you have any examples of older folks who maybe run it?
Well, good question. First of all, you do have to be at least 21, and I'm not sure about you, so we're going to be carding you.
I am.
All right, but you do have to be at least 21 to participate in any way, even drive the vans. But it's interesting you asked that. One of my favorite teams is a team out of Atlanta, Georgia. And they've run it. They may not have run it last year, but I know they ran it the first 3 years. And their average age on that team was over 65 years. Over 65 years.
That's great.
The oldest gentleman was 78.
It's awesome.
78. Oh, it was amazing. Amazing. I just loved them to death.
I love it when I see it.
And they get out there and just have a great time.
Yeah.
And what kind of resources do you have available to people that are coming from out of town to get help getting vans and some sort of race day logistical stuff?
Well, I'll be honest, not a whole lot. I mean,
there's not a lot out there, really.
If anybody out there happens to be a owner of a van company, let me tell you, they've not been the easiest with which to work, to be honest with you. I would have thought that those folks who rent vans would have been jumping at it. We need 600, 700 vans every year. People are willing to pay. So we don't have a whole lot in the van side. But all the hotel information is online. Again, there's a travel page as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And also, Chris was good enough to put the last year's Bible out.
2012 Bible.
It's got all sorts of tidbits about where's the best place to grab a bite to eat, where you might want to find some authentic
Malone's, baby.
some authentic Kentucky beer cheese, all sorts of good information in there. So that's online as well.
So you can get all the, you get all the stuff at the BourbonChase.com website. There's tons of stuff out there, and it's really got a lot of information crammed in there.
And it is a great race. You mentioned before we were on air here that it was voted a top 4 you guys aren't even a marathon. You were voted a top 4 marathon.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I guess it was about 9 months ago. I got contacted by Away.com.
Okay.
And as I understand it, they are a division of Orbitz Travel.
Yep.
I think it's their online travel magazine. And yeah, they had informed me, excuse me, I've had a bit of a cold.
Yeah.
They informed me that we had just been named the fourth destination marathon, even though we're not a marathon.
4th best destination
Yes, the
marathon.
4th. And we were up there with places like Big Sur out in California, that marathon, the Paris Marathon where they serve wine, the Bermuda Marathon, some outstanding events. So we were
Good company.
Great company.
And for good reason, though. I mean, it's gorgeous out there, man. And people from here just don't know, how awesome
They
horse
really
country
don't.
is.
It is absolutely stunning running along. You're running along those white picket fences of the horse country.
Great
It's just
people out
beautiful.
there.
Nicest people around, other than right here in this studio. But but no lie, Southern hospitality. It is the gateway to the South. Southern hospitality. I'm very proud of the race. I started the race 5 years ago, really as a marriage of 3 of my loves: running and fitness, bourbon, and Kentucky. And it's really ended up being a perfect combination of the 3.
I'm jealous, man. That's like the perfect combo right there, man. It's awesome.
Well, you guys have an
I'm
open
ready.
invitation.
Well, I
if you
appreciate
ever
it.
want to come and put
into
together
it.
a team, we'd love to have you.
I'm sorry you got a cold. I'd love to share a bourbon with you tonight, but maybe
I'm
next
afraid
time
doctor's
through.
order says I'm off. But you come to Kentucky and I'll do the pouring.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, you have a great excuse to go do that and run the race, drink some bourbon, and maybe see a horse race or two.
That's right.
But listen, this has been great having you come out here all the way from Kentucky, Mike, to come on the show. Despite your little travel sickness, you did great, man. It was great talking to you, man. Just tons of energy,
Fun
tons
race.
of enthusiasm, and just tons of information about this awesome race that you're putting on out there.
Well, I enjoy it very much, and I'm dead serious. I'd love to have you guys down.
We
we love entertaining folks.
No doubt.
I'll
We'll be
definitely
there.
take you up on that offer for sure, man. That'd be awesome. Listen, man, go to BourbonChase.com for all the information about the race, 2013, 2014, all future editions. Mike, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you much.
And we will see all you guys next time on Gotta Get Running. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.